So I first saw coverage of this over the weekend, and it actually really gave me the urge to talk about this subject. For those unfamiliar, um, over this past weekend, as of June 26th today, the Diablo 4 servers were rendered pretty much unplayable by a DDoS attack, a DDoS attack. We're going to go over this now. We're going to go over what this means for the game as a whole, and also I'm going to offer some opinions about what I think that this means for the gaming industry in general. So we'll go through this particular article at the moment. This is on Dexerto. I don't read a lot of their content, but I actually quite liked this particular article. So we'll just go through it together. So, Diablo 4 fans slam Blizzard as DDoS attacks leave them unable to play, by Carver Fisher. So, Diablo 4 is a game that requires a massive time investment to get anywhere with. Even getting through the main story is a lengthy proposition, and getting good endgame gear in your character with the right build takes even longer. So, it goes without saying that fans of the series who are busy would like to play whenever they have time. People who have long work weeks look forward to spare time on the weekends, and those that can spend molding their characters into what they want them to be. Yeah, I think something that's really not kind of addressed enough is I feel like the sort of people who play Diablo are going to be older gamers, maybe people who have jobs, people maybe even have kids. I get the feeling that, especially for a lot of people, if you play Diablo today, you probably got into Diablo with, at the earliest, I'd say Diablo 2, but I think we're also forgetting that Diablo 3 came out, what, like 10 years ago now, if I want to say? 15th of May 2012. Diablo 3 is more than 10 years old now. Do with that information as you will. So that being said, the game was hit by DDoS attacks. So for those unfamiliar, DDoS stands for Distributed Denial of Service. It's basically a function where a bad actor, a hacker, script kiddie, whatever you want to call them, will use some kind of method, usually something like a botnet, I believe, to flood a server with basically junk requests and junk packets of data, is my understanding. What this does is this overwhelms the server, and then legitimate traffic or usage on that server is unable to function as a result. So I guess if I wanted an example, imagine that you're trying to get into a building and a mob hired by someone that doesn't want business in that building to happen hires a this person hires a flash mob to stand in the entranceway of every single entrance of the building and basically block legitimate traffic from getting in or out. That's fundamentally what a DDoS is. So Blizzard servers were hit by DDoS attacks. Many were left unable to log in and play the game during those precious weekend hours. This led to players calling out Blizzard's always online model and saying that it shouldn't be required for those looking to grind on their own. Many modern live service titles have an always online requirement built into them, meaning that the players have to have an internet connection in order to play them, even if they plan to play on their own. This goes both ways, however, as players are also unable to access the game if the servers are down. Not only does this raise concerns about what could happen where at the point that game servers go down for good, but also what happens in the case of what's been happening recently with DDoS attacks affecting Blizzard. While nothing can be done while the attacks are happening, Diablo 4 players are hitting out at Blizzard due to a game that can be enjoyed by yourself having an always online requirement. Now, this is kind of the crux of the issue of what I want to speak about, because I think I'm confident in saying that most of the people that play Diablo 4 are playing it as a primarily single-player experience. Now, I've played Diablo 4. I've enjoyed my time with it so far. I've not finished the game yet because, I'll be honest, it is a pretty big game. But I am playing it solo. I am not partying up with people. I am just running around in the game world with my little necromancer dude, these little skeletons, and I'm just getting through dungeons and grinding through it like that. Now, for those unfamiliar with how Diablo 4 handles online components, when you're in game, you can see other players running around in the overworld as well. You have the option to interact with them or not. There are instances where world bosses will appear that you and other players can team up with, but if you don't have another player with you, when you enter a dungeon, you enter the dungeon on your own. And as it's Diablo 4, I want to say at least, the majority of your time will be spent in these dungeons. So the online component in terms of seeing other players, I mean, okay, you might occasionally see another player who shoots by on their, their crazy mount or whatever, but it doesn't really have that much of a material effect on the gameplay unless you're specifically looking to party up with people. And I'll be honest, if you're doing that, you're probably partying up with someone that you already know, not the random that you saw in town. Which raises the question of why did Blizzard incorporate this always online element? It can't be for the betterment of the game content. If that were the case, then I guess they would make multiplayer a optional thing, a go online button, for example. No, I mean, really, at the end of the day, what we're looking at here is an additional element of DRM involved. DRM, for those, again, unfamiliar, stands for Digital Rights Management, and it is basically a function where a game will, ostensibly, it's to prevent piracy, right? It's to prevent unauthorized access to software. Probably the most common method of DRM that you'll see, at least in PC gaming, is running games through Steam. So if you run a game through Steam, there's a certain level of authentication there because you're basically saying, I purchased this game through this platform, therefore I'm authorized to run it. Of course, that's not enough for a lot of developers. You start to see anti-piracy measures such as de-novo, which is a particularly infamous one, which is this additional level of complexity and processing power from your machine that's basically used to authenticate your piece of software with, to make sure that you purchased it. And it looks like this wasn't enough for Blizzard, because of course it wasn't, right? Let's be honest, it wasn't enough. So they sat there with their ideas crayon on their board and said, why don't we make it so that even if people want to play this ostensibly single player game, they always have to be online? And that's it, right? So it's another level of inconvenience and complexity, which is fundamentally an effort to stop piracy. And I'm going to be honest, you're never going to stop pirates. You're never going to stop pirates. It's never going to happen. People are going to find a way around. Now, how long will it take them to crack Diablo 4? I don't know. They may have already done it for all I know. I don't pirate games, so I don't really keep up with that stuff. I am 1,000,000% confident it will happen. But this always online element raises some other difficult questions, which have actually already been raised in this article here by Dixerdo. We'll just continue reading for a bit and then I'll get back to this. Can't wait for the servers to come back online so I can play single player. And this is for Diablo 3. Right? This 11-year-old game, as said here. So Diablo 3 had a similar design back when it was first released. Always online was much less common at the time, but D3's launch really showed how many issues that model could bring, with the game being all but unplayable after its initial launch. Some players have even expressed that they'd love to be able to play the game offline, even with the option for playing off online available for them. Quote, honestly, if I never saw any of y'all zipping around, I'd be perfectly content, commented one user. Yeah, it's basically echoing what I said. While this would surely impact one's ability to complete world events, it's also an option many players would love to have. I'm going to be honest as well, at least while you're leveling, world events, I mean, they give you some XP and they give you some treasure, but I can get that in dungeons, it's not really... World events in themselves aren't enough to justify having this always online live service component to the game. Quote, give the people offline mode. I don't need PvP, I'm just trying to level and gear up like most other non-pro gamers, end quote, another user commented. It's hard to say when, if ever, Diablo 4 will get an online mode. However, server downtime due to factors outside of Blizzard's control have certainly showed the flaws in requiring players to be connected to servers in order to play. I'm going to be honest with you, they're never going to add an offline mode, right? This is a business decision, and the suits in Blizzard, when they're not sexually harassing people, have decided that allegedly sexually harassing people have decided that there needs to be this always online component. They just got fucked up on the special milk in the company fridge, and they were like, okay, yeah, we'll just always make it online. It's a sorry indictment of the gaming industry as a whole that we have this AAA title that requires these servers to play. And I'm gonna echo Ross from Game Dungeon here, who's excellent channel. If you've not checked him out, you almost certainly have. And his approach is one that I actually agree with, which is that if a game has an always online component, its death is assured, because the company is not always going to keep those servers up. And what's going to happen when Blizzard decide, whatever reason, and let's be honest, they've made a lot of very bad financial blunders recently, that it's no longer financially viable for them to keep the Diablo 4 servers online. What's going to happen then? What's going to happen is they're going to take these servers offline, and anyone who legally purchased the game will not be able to access it. That's just it. You, who has paid, well, I think, you know, AAA title 2023 is $50, $60 on a game, will no longer be able to access it, completely at the whim of this other company. And I personally think that's quite scary. And it's a shame, right? So I've played Diablo 4. I've had fun with it. I've enjoyed my time with it. But unfortunately, it's just on this ticking time bomb of a system. And it's a system where if some kind of bad actor or some kind of hacker gets in, they can completely lock you out of what is effectively an offline experience by taking out the online component. Is this an indictment of the decisions that Blizzard makes? I personally think so. Is this something that Blizzard themselves are likely to fix? No. No, I don't think so. I think that their products literally being unplayable and also just completely negatively impacting gamers is not as important to them as this effort to placate stockholders, which I think is what this decision is. It's purely a business decision. It is a business decision that is to the massive detriment of the quality of the product. But at the end of the day, when you have a giant game studio like this, business will win out over quality every single time. But that's just my opinion. I would very much like to see what you think about this in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.